So Barry, you know real estate terribly well. You're quoted as saying you have to go block by block these days. So as you look at those blocks, what are the good blocks?
The good blocks, data centers are good blocks today. Anything with power. It's true. I mean, I think it's just interesting to see, real estate is not, you can't use one word to describe real estate. You can play up and down the capital stack. You can make mortgages, mezzanine mortgages, preferred equity investments. You can buy homes, you can buy students, housing, you can buy senior housing, you can buy land, you can buy single family for rent, build to rent, you can buy industrial. I mean, there's so many different flavors and it's hard. The one thing that is true about the real estate markets today is because of Powell's rate movement, we have a sort of a balance sheet crisis. We don't have an asset level crisis. For the most part, the asset classes, at least in the United States, are fairly in balance, supply and demand. There's a little bit of oversupply of multifamily in some of the growth markets, but that will get absorbed over the next 18 months and we'll be back to a very healthy rent profile, I think. But for the most part, people are going to have trouble refinancing their debt because interest rates rose 500 basis points. And also many of the traditional lenders, like the banks, are backing out because they're full up to their gills in real estate loans. But real estate is completely a block by block thing. And in an asset class like office, which most people talk about and relate to, and everybody knows is quite distressed, even in the office markets, the really good buildings are fully leased. They're able to ask very strong rents, and they're getting them. So it's I kind of like it because it's really about, is the building a good building? Is it relevant? Does it make people smile when they walk in the morning? Do people want to be seen together? We built a building in Miami, and we were an old building, and the entire accounting staff, 70 people, they wanted to work from home. We built this new building. We didn't ask anyone to come in. We actually had to tell them they're allowed to work at home because it became a competitive disadvantage to say you had to come in. Everybody comes in. They have lunch together. They chat. They talk about their dogs, who won the football game last night, how bad the Heat are doing. Now they're finished for the season. But, I mean, there's nothing, I think, like being together. And I think this will pass over time. And as the labor market softens up, I think you'll see American workers spend more time in the office. And I get a lot of negative, I try not to read, I don't tweet, but I've gotten tweets about comments I've made. And I think companies have to provide daycare, if it's necessary, relevant. There are other things we can do, but you're still better together. You're still innovation. Young people asking a quick question, not having to do it on a Zoom call. It's so much better for companies for innovation and creativity. I think Google was the lead on this. At first, they were thinking this was great, and they said, hey, we're losing the creative spark, the unplanned moments, and the small education. Plus, if you want to build corporate identity and corporate, you'll fight in the foxhole for me. It's hard to fight in foxholes from your Zoom camera while you're laying on your couch in your house, waiting for the day to pass so you can take your dog for a walk. So it's much better together.
Markets react to things like interest rates, like work from home. They also often overreact. Have there been overreactions on the downside for office, for example, some places, or on the upside for data centers? Because we hear so much about data centers. Is there a danger of getting overbuilt?
There's a regulator on data centers because the project is so expensive that if you don't have a lease, you can't finance the construction. So it's almost impossible to overbuild it. There will be people who will buy land in the hope of getting power, in the hope of getting a tenant, and they may wind up losing a bunch of money if they paid too much for land, and it has no alternative use other than their dream of someday getting a power source. So I think it was Stanley Druckenmiller was at this conference, and he said, it might be overhyped short term, but it's underhyped long term. And I think that's probably true. What we try to think, I try to spend time thinking about is AI's implications on the real estate markets. How are things going to change? And then what it's going to do to destabilize or support some of our tenants, right? So which ones will go the way of the dodo bird? What industries will be heavily impacted? And will they come up with new applications that require them to keep as many people just doing different things? Or will they just have people do everything? I was listening to Jensen Huang speak at a conference the other day, and he showed how they can build a boat through AI, a very complicated super tanker. And then he said, we can build the factory that builds the boat, and then we'll build the robots that build the boat in the factory. I'm like, where are the workers? What do we do? I was thinking, well, I'm going to continue to invest heavily in resorts because everyone will have all this time off and they'll be working from our hotels in Hawaii. So it's, I think AI, is just the beginning. I know how it's going to change so much. And it's very exciting and also terrifying.
So we've gone through a period where all companies become tech companies, so a digital company. Yeah. We're going to go through a period where all real estate companies become power companies. You mentioned that with respect to data centers. We already have it to some extent with respect to environmental concerns. We have some big real estate developers really developing solar, wind, and solar. So are we basically going to end up where there's really no difference between the real estate companies and the power companies?
No, we're not actually building the plants. We're building the buildings that take the power from the plants. And it's heavily regulated in the United States. So what we will do with renewables to power, and especially as you move offshore, when you go to Europe where there's no coal, no oil, no gas, and they have the deficit of power, you're going to need to come up with either miniature nukes, fission, or renewables. We're building something in Ireland for Google, and I think it'll be powered by a wind farm. But there's also a redundancy factor. You need backup. We own, at one point, the largest wind farm in the United States. And then they had that great freeze. Not only did our turbines freeze, but the gas plants behind them froze. That was not a happy day. It was like a 1,000-year flood. But I think a lot of these, in terms of my industry, you're seeing mergers or conflicts between infrastructure funds that want to do data centers and real estate funds that do data centers. And the infrastructure, and typically we're here at this conference, there's many sovereign wealth funds and other investors. They're invested in infrastructure funds, and they will do things to a lower return than let's say our opportunistic funds will do. So you could have them bidding against themselves for the same project. We're trying to earn a 20, and the infrastructure fund's trying to earn a 12. They're going to win, and on the same underwriting, they win because they have a lower cost of funds than we do. It's not a problem. I mean, we were the 4th largest data center owner in the world today, privately held. And we sort of got there by one and twosies, just working with tenants and finding opportunities for them, where we just control the largest data center operator in Ireland. And it's been at least that's the one bright spot of construction. I think, there's so much. The thing about interest rates going up, and you've mentioned the office markets. Office markets were struggling with return to work. When you added in the fact that interest rates have gone up 500 basis points and the yields on office buildings, you might have bought an office building in Manhattan at a 6% unleveraged yield. Today, other than a trophy family or somebody says, I need to own that for the brochure of my family office portfolio, those yields can be 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So you have a double whammy. You have a crisis of tenancy and you have a crisis in the balance sheet in office. And again, they're all being swept under the rug with the same brush. In the building we office in Manhattan, it's 100% full. And every time a floor comes up, it gets released in 30 days. So if you know what you're doing, you can use this cloud to find real jewels, real diamonds in the rough. But you have to know what you're looking at. And I've been through 5 of these. So this one is in some ways the least fun because we weren't doing anything. The real estate industry was we weren't the issue. Right. It had nothing to do with inflation. We had nothing to do with stimulus packages or the lack of supply of stuff on the shelf. We didn't overbuild much. We weren't causing any banking crisis ourselves. And then, Powell tried to stop inflation, but he used a tool that took down a lot of property and commercial property. And it's hard. It's a hard environment because I don't think it's working. You can see the strength of the economy. You can see how many jobs are being created every month over month in healthcare. And he can't stop that with interest rates. So he's frustrated. I know. I think we thought the economy would slow, but there's so much public spending. And Congress passes a $100 billion aid package to the Ukraine and Israel and Taiwan. And that's another stimulus package. That's $100 million, obviously going to American manufacturers to produce weapons for these wars. That's another stimulus package on top of the CHIPS Act, on top of the Environmental Act, and on top of the Infrastructure Act. And all that money is coursing through the economy. And his interest rates, it's like, one foot's on the gas and one foot's on the accelerator. And usually the engine blows up when that happens. But let's just hope they can bring this thing to a happy conclusion.
And as we sit here, it looks at least like those interest rates are going to stay up there for a while.
God, I hope
not coming back down right away.
I'm gonna say hope's not a business strategy. I'm still gonna hope.
But
I think we can get used to it. I just think it's going to be a big reset.
Is there a day of reckoning coming in real estate? That so-called maturity wall, or does it just play out over a long period of time? There's a long period of time, almost like Japan was for years, where it just doesn't grow, it doesn't go forward, it just sort of hangs in there and refinances one at a time.
The great thing about our system is capital will adjust and find the opportunities. I do think it's going to be a rolling wall of thunder. Every time a loan matures, it's a negotiation or an explosion. There's an extension. A borrower tries to come up with money. He doesn't have it. He has to go to people like us, or in the old days, there were doctors and lawyers and friends, and raise the money to pay down the debt rather than give the asset back. It'll be market by market, asset by asset. And we reported earnings today from Starwood Property Trust, the nation's largest mortgage REIT. And, we're navigating this fairly well. We have $1.5 billion of liquidity in the company, and we're playing defense. We're not playing offense right now. We're making sure that if a borrower needs money, we're willing to take the property back and do with it what he was going to do with it, just at a lower basis. So we took back a building in Washington, D.C., but it easily converts to residential, and we'll go ahead and make it a residential project and finish the project. And it was going to be an office building, but at our basis, which was 60 cents of his basis, it works as a residential. So that's what we don't care. We're agnostic. As long as we do well with shareholders, we don't care.
You mentioned return to office. It wasn't that long ago. It wasn't return to office in New York. It was just leaving New York altogether and moving to Miami.
Yeah.
Have we seen peak Miami for the time being? Because there was a time that everyone was rushing down there with their employees and things like that. And now you hear maybe not so fast, they're coming back a little bit.
Miami has an issue because of schools. It doesn't have enough schools. And that's probably the reason Miami's slowing. But Amazon just announced they're moving taking 50,000 feet. There are a lot of companies that would move down if they could get their employees' kids into schools, which is impossible. So you got to be very bullish on Citadel, which obviously left Chicago. I mean, they alone have decided they're going to make Miami into the financial capital of the United States, and they have the power to do that. Ken is very philanthropic, and he's moved a lot of 1,500 people into the market, and that affects the housing market. We're waiting. I mean, if I was really smart, I'd just buy all the houses in Coral Gables and sell them to the Citadel employees as they move down. I don't think Miami's peaked. I think Miami and Florida have sort of cycles because they get overbuilt, but they're ever higher cycles. You just have to have stamina and stay with it. The housing market, a $4 million house became a $10 million house, and now it's an $8 million house, but it's still twice what the guy paid for it 4 years ago. So, and really good stuff. I mean, recently Barry Diller moved down. Jeff Bezos has moved down. I anticipated the climate, that obviously the weather's better. I anticipated, certainly in the winter. I anticipated the tax savings, and obviously for the darkest blue states, it's material. I didn't anticipate how welcoming the state is to business and how success is actually applauded, not vilified. So I think for businesses, that's a nice thing. The state wants you to succeed, and they want to attract business. And maybe the blue states, I mean, the governor of Florida said, I guess he got on a phone call with the governor of New York and said, stop taking my people. He says, every time you talk, I get another tenant. So, every time they try to chase, I look at these two states, New York and California. We're sitting in California. They have massive budget deficits, massive. So they have to cut services or raise taxes. In Florida, Texas have massive budget surpluses. So they're in a positive flywheel. They're spending money to improve their infrastructure in schools and universities, and the dark blue states are finding that in order to provide the social services that they want to provide, they're chasing the wealthy out, and they can move. But I think Florida is on a roll. It will slow down, and there's an affordability issue. I mean, rents have risen pretty far. They're going to overbuild it. I mean, they'll be overbuilding in Miami. There's always been overbuilding. It'll come and go. You'll buy it, stuff cheap, and then there'll be another cycle. It's the real estate world.
Barry, you made some news this week about Brown. You've been a loyal supporter of Brown. Have done an awful lot of good for that school. You said for the time being, as I understand, you're going to really suspend further donations. Why were you so upset about what they did? As I understand, what they did is they agreed with the students they would talk about divestment. They just talk about it. What's so wrong about talking?
I think schools and the country needs to get back to facts, get to the truth. 1 and 1 is 2. It's not 4. Even if the students tell you it's 4, it's 2. And I think I think the number one place you should teach the truth is universities and schools of higher education. So if the kids actually knew what they were talking about, I mean, I think they assume that if you knew Hamas beheaded children, blew up, put them in microwaves, killed children in front of their parents and parents in front of their children, and didn't hide it, they celebrated it. You can't tell me you're in favor of Hamas. I mean, even the Nazis hid their atrocities. Hamas celebrated that. And this is an organization that in their charter calls for the genocide of Jews. Kill all the Jews worldwide, hunt them under rocks, and kill them. So there's a genocide. It's Hamas's effort to kill Jews worldwide. There's no such charter in Israel. If Israel wanted to commit genocide against the Palestinians, it would take them 33 seconds. And they've done everything they can to basically protect civilians. It's awful. Nobody wants civilian deaths. But the reason they're happening is because Hamas is hiding among the Palestinians. And if Hamas could took their 400 miles of tunnels and put the children and the women and the elderly in those tunnels, like the British did during World War II, they wouldn't die. But they need to die in order to get this world so upset with Israel, and it's working, and the kids are falling for this line. So for me, you're justifying a narrative that should not have a stage, right? These kids are wrong. Let them take the conference room, put them up on stage, tell the facts. There are 2 million Arabs living in Israel. 1.7 million of them are citizens. It is not an apartheid state. There is no genocide. There are 1 million Jews living in the 14 neighboring Arab states in 1948. Today is 14,000. That's apartheid. That's a genocide. So the narrative is completely wrong. The kids think this is South Africa. This is not South Africa. The Arabs sit in parliament. They're in the government. They're lawyers and doctors. So I went to Brown. I was a trustee for 12 years. And I think the universities, I think Ben Sass at the University of Florida said it exactly right. This isn't actually, there's a debate. I mean, you can talk Israel. The Jews have been in Israel before Christ. And there are physical remnants, and there's the Old Testament. It's not colonizers. They didn't colonize the place. They've been there longer than the Arabs. So I don't think you justify. I think if they don't take the arguments on their head, if in fact these universities don't approve BDS, they don't divest from Israel, the kids will say people like me influence the board. They need to know the facts first. I am about the facts. And if you know the facts and then you're pro-Palestinian or pro-Hamas, I'm not I believe in a two-state solution. But I don't believe in the right to return because there'll be no Israel. So it is a democracy. It's an ugly democracy. We're an ugly democracy, right? But we're about the hope of peace and kindness and the right, everyone's right, civil rights. And I think Israel actually is much more in that camp, whether you're pro-gay, pro-women, transgender, whatever it is, they're much more in the mold. I look at these children, I say, I will pay for your flight to Hamas's rule. And let me tell you, let's see how long you last there. Especially, I mean, you see the gays for Hamas, I mean, you would last 30 seconds. 30 seconds.
So given what we know, what should Brown have done? Or for that matter, not just Brown, Columbia, my alma mater of University of Michigan. This is a problem across a lot of colleges. What should the adults do?
Encourage free speech and debate, not violence, not hate speech. No child should have a fear for his safety walking around a university campus. Get rid of the agitators. I mean, it should occur to somebody that the attack on Israel on October 7th was right. The rumor was the Saudi-Israeli peace conflict was going to be solved. This well-orchestrated campus demonstration happened after Iran shot 300 missiles into Israel. And Israel responded with sort of a light touch, like, we can get you, but you know we're here. And then they pulled back, right? Because the administration said, don't do anything. And they kind of did, but nothing, right? World sentiment was shifting against Israel. Unleash the Kraken. Let the kids protest all across the United States campuses. It was well orchestrated by these SJP and all these organizations that are being funded by some left-wing organizations. If I were the president of Brown, I would say, we stand with the democracies and free speech. Israel's not an apartheid state. Here's the proof. Israel's not committing genocide. Here's the proof. If you don't like it, I understand. That's great. Leave your keys on my desk and go to another university. Ben Sass did that. That's what all these university presidents should do. They should stand up. By the way, open the doors, have a debate. invite the people on both sides, but have that debate and let the children see the facts and then understand the situation and then make a decision. I assume these people aren't all anti-Semitic. I assume it's not because all these children want to kill all the Jews in the world. I just think it's naive, it's sad, it's offensive. And actually, my father survived Germany, so I have a lot to say. I'm just not going to be quiet about it.
It's clear you feel strongly about it. A lot of people feel strongly about it. But when you make a decision like, I'm not going to contribute for the time being, is that an expression of your views, your principles that you feel you're talking about, or is it an attempt to change behavior? Do you think it'll go beyond an expression to actually change behavior?
Look, I don't think these universities. Christina Paxson's a great president at Brown University. She's trying really hard. She's got a. These universities have very left-leaning faculties. You should not have a tenured professor who said there was no Holocaust. How can you teach that at Columbia University? How could that person have a job? And if you thought that was fair, if you had a professor who said there was no slavery, it didn't happen, would you have him as a tenured professor? Or if a professor who's saying he celebrates and thinks that at Cornell who thought the Hamas should be celebrated, killing innocent children and parents. I mean, they should be shown the door. And I don't want to pay for them, so I don't want to support a university that houses that language. So I'm just saying, like, who would do that? You support those who support you. And I'm not, again, I understand if I would like there to be a government on the other side for Israel to make peace with. I'm not a supporter of Netanyahu. He needs to go because I don't think he's the guy to make peace on the Israeli side. But there's a significant number of Israelis that want peace, the majority. I'm not so sure that's true right now on the Palestinian side. I mean, this is a brainwashed group. All these children in Palestine have grown up under Hamas rule, and all the money, almost $9 billion of foreign aid, didn't go to build resorts on the Mediterranean. We're at Mike's conference. Mike said if you'd given this money to Lee Kuan Yew, he would have built Singapore by the sea on the 25 miles of Mediterranean land they were given. They could have built the greatest resorts in the world. Instead, they built tunnels and bought weapons and trained their military. So people have the wrong narrative. And just because you say it doesn't make it right. And I empathize. I don't want anyone to starve. But, they say that Israel blockaded Gaza. I mean, they did get 20,000 weapons into there. It was some blockade, huh? They couldn't get food in, but they could get weapons bought from North Korea. And you've seen them. They're there. And please don't tell me that October 7th didn't happen. And that shouldn't be allowed. That kind of garbage and dribble should not be allowed on universities anywhere. So, I feel very strongly that I'll support those who support me. We're major donors to stem cell research. I do a lot in social justice initiatives and Reform Alliance, and I chaired Robin Hood, which are going to the gala on Monday night. I'm all for the equality of opportunity, not equality of outcomes, because I think I started with nothing, zero. So my father came here with nothing. So this is a great country. I just want it to be a great country. I don't want to lose our moral, our way, and our character as a country. We are an amazing place where people can achieve their dreams, but it's not when you get off the road and sort of don't understand what's going on.